U.S. President Barack Obama reassures Americans as Ebola fears grow. Pope Francis calls for a change in the way the church interacts with gays, divorcees, and others previously marginalized. And why did Greece roll out the red carpet for George Clooney's wife, Amal? Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, fears of Ebola are rising in the United States, where a second nurse in Dallas, Texas, has been diagnosed with the disease, a case top U.S. health officials say is very concerning. In Washington, President Barack Obama canceled a scheduled campaign trip Wednesday to hold a meeting with cabinet officials on Ebola. VOA's Aropanda reports from the White House.
It all began with Liberian national Thomas Eric Duncan, the first Ebola case on U.S. soil, who succumbed to the deadly virus last week. Now, just days later, not one, but two of the nurses who treated Duncan at Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas have been diagnosed with Ebola. Dr. Daniel Varga is the hospital's chief clinical officer.
A lot is being said about what may or may not have occurred to cause some of our colleagues to contract this disease. But it's clear there was an exposure somewhere, sometime in their treatment of Mr. Duncan.
And with the nurse aboard a domestic flight just hours before being hospitalized Tuesday, the concerns about possible exposure have grown. The latest case prompted President Barack Obama to cancel a Wednesday campaign trip and stay in Washington for a meeting with cabinet officials. He told reporters at the White House any new U.S. Ebola cases will be much more aggressively monitored, but that current protocols in place do work.
If we do these protocols properly, if we follow the steps, if we get the information out, then the likelihood of widespread Ebola outbreaks in this country are very, very low.
President Obama announced that special rapid response teams will be dispatched to any U.S. hospitals forced to deal with new Ebola cases. While reassuring Americans of the domestic response, President Obama said the United States cannot lose sight of the international response to the Ebola outbreak that has killed nearly 4,500 people in West Africa.
I am absolutely confident that we can prevent a serious outbreak of the disease here in the United States. But it becomes more difficult to do so if this epidemic of Ebola rages out of control in West Africa.
Mr. Obama said the investment the U.S. makes in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea is an investment in the public health of Americans. On Wednesday, the president underscored the need for greater international resources during phone calls with European and Japanese leaders. Aru Pandey, VOA News, the White House.
A New York hospital near one of the city's major airports says it's ready to handle any Ebola patients that might come its way, even though the city so far has not had any cases of the virus. Here's Colin Lovett.
New York Hospital Queens lies less than 16 kilometers from John F. Kennedy International Airport, where officials recently started temperature screening travelers who have been in one of the 3 West African countries where the Ebola outbreak is occurring. Speaking at a news conference this week, Emergency Department Director Dr. Mark Kinsuch says the hospital has set up a special isolation area for Ebola patients.
The emergency department is prepared and at the ready to receive any patient any time.
Dr. Kinsuch said the hospital will diagnose patients based on the guidelines from New York State's Department of Health and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The key to all of this is the determination if the patient at risk had a travel history in an area where Ebola Ebola cases have occurred.
Hospital officials say so far they have not found any cases of Ebola infection. But Mimi Lim, the Director of Infection Control and Patient Services, says they have been preparing for many years.
We have been preparing, actually, started back as quite a few years with bioterrorism. So this is not new for us. It's just that we just need to change it up a little bit as to what we need to do.
Experts say if you have recently visited the African countries where the Ebola virus is spreading or come into contact with sick people, you should measure your body temperature continuously for 21 days and keep touch with your family doctor. If you think you may be infected, contact the hospital by phone first. But Dr. Sorana Siegel-Maurer, the hospital's director of infectious diseases, called on the public not to be nervous. She said a little fever or nausea do not necessarily indicate an Ebola infection, and she emphasized the need for preparation and calm. For Sure Wrong, I'm Colin Lovett, VOA News.
Well, tens of thousands of South Sudanese citizens are coping with rising floodwaters. VOA East Africa correspondent Gabe Joslo has just returned from the Bentiu protection site, where aid workers are scrambling to help the residents there. For more perspective on the Saugi situation, Gabe Joslo now joins us via Skype from Nairobi, Kenya. Hello, Gabe.
Hi, Vincent.
Yeah, first I have to say, really fabulous reporting there from South Sudan. Question is, from what you observed, do things look like they're going to get better in the coming weeks or even worse?
Well, that depends on one thing, which is whether there will be some kind of peace agreement or actual peace on the ground in the areas around Bentiu. I think just from a flooding standpoint, it looks like the rains are starting to die down now. But the problem is that the almost 50,000 people who are living in these flooded conditions are still too afraid to go back home because there has still been a threat of continued violence between the government forces and the armed opposition in the area.
Now, what are you hearing? Is the government in any way showing indications that it's doing something about the plight of those who have been forced into such circumstances?
I think the government is expressing a lot of concern about that. I mean, it's not just a humanitarian concern, but the fact is a lot of the major cities in the three affected states in South Sudan have all been emptied out. And there's a big problem even getting the economy back up and running. And there's a threat to the oil fields, which are responsible for the majority of South Sudan's revenue. So the government is concerned for many reasons, and everybody really wants peace in this circumstance. But there still is this power struggle, and that's what the crux of the negotiations taking place in Ethiopia have been about. It's about whether the opposition is going to have a role in a transitional government, and exactly how that power balance is going to lie.
You know, it was really stunning to hear the UN official that you spoke with saying that while the ideal situation would be to get the people out of that camp, most people would rather stay in that camp in those conditions. How bad are things outside of the camp?
Well, it's really a big unknown. I mean, there's an ethnic, tribal dimension at play in Bentiu, in that most of the people who are living in the camp are Nuer, while the soldiers who are controlling the town are Dinka. And this conflict has featured a lot of inter-ethnic strife and fighting. So people in the camps are really afraid of the government soldiers that are in control of the town. So afraid that they would rather brave this knee-high or waist-high water and live in these really wretched conditions rather than take the risk of trying to go back outside.
Now, very quickly, the UN is trying as much as possible to make that camp a bit habitable. Do they have enough resources at this point?
Not at the moment. They're doing the best that they can with some small water pumps to just physically drain the water out, but they're hoping to get some larger pumps and some more material in the coming weeks, which is really going to be a crucial time period.
Well, Gabe, thanks a lot for your reporting.
Thank you.
Well, Gabe Joslo reporting live via Skype from Nairobi. Well, shocking photographs purporting to show Syrian torture victims are on display at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum here in Washington, D.C. The museum says the pictures are among thousands of photographs recently smuggled out of Syria by a military policeman turned defector. VOA's Julie Tabo has more, and we warn you that some of the images are disturbing.
The images are horrifying. The semi-naked, emaciated bodies show signs of torture, severe bruises, cuts, and burn marks. The U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum says these are just a small sample of about 55,000 photographs taken by Syrian military police between 2011 and 2013, showing victims tortured by the government of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The images are set to show the bodies of about 11,000 civilians believed to have been killed at government detention centers. They were given to the museum by a Syrian military photographer turned defector who goes by the name Caesar. who smuggled them out of Syria on digital drives at great peril. According to the museum, forensic and international law experts have authenticated the pictures and found the defector's story credible. The FBI is examining the photos. Cameron Hudson is the policy director for the museum's Center for the Prevention of Genocide.
When he saw the pictures of elderly, children, women, he knew that these were not battlefield deaths, and he could no longer accept the official story that the Assad regime was putting out there. At great personal risk to himself, he spirited out more than 55,000 of these photographs to show the world what he was already witness to.
The Syrian government claims the photos are not credible and attributes them to battlefield deaths, but the museum believes in their authenticity.
When you see emaciation, when you see, very clear, visible signs of torture, you understand that that didn't happen in a combat setting.
Hudson says the museum has a mandate to alert the world about crimes against humanity, and they hope this exhibit will help ensure the conflict in Syria and its people are not forgotten. Julie Tabro, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, the Catholic Church signals more acceptance of gays. Stay with us.
Sia Nyama Koroma, the First Lady of Sierra Leone, speaks to VOA on the Ebola crisis.
I would want the people in West Africa to know that Ebola is real. Ebola kills. Early detection and prompt treatment can save lives. And I'm asking our people not to victimize or stigmatize survivors. Ebola is a challenge, but together we'll all be able to overcome it.
That was Sia Nyama Koroma, the First Lady of Sierra Leone, speaking to VOA Africa on the Ebola crisis.
Well, it's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with new Ebola information from the WHO. Lino.
Hello, Vincent. Hello, everyone. The World Health Organization warns new cases of Ebola could hit 10,000 a week by December.
There's a lot of information that suggests that
Bruce Aylward, Assistant Director General of the World Health Organization, issued a dire warning on Tuesday during a news conference in Geneva, saying the world is not doing enough to stop the spread of the Ebola outbreak. According to the WHO, there have now been 8,914 reported cases of Ebola, of whom 4,447 have died, almost all of them in West Africa. Among these cases, 16 have been treated outside Africa, 7 in the US, 3 in Spain, 1 in France, 1 in the UK, 3 in Germany, and 1 in Norway. The UN body said on Tuesday that in 2 months' time, there could be up to 10,000 new Ebola cases per week. The WHO also said the fatality rate of the Ebola outbreak has now risen to 70%. Joining us live via Skype from Washington, D.C. for more on the subject is Daniel Epstein, WHO spokesperson in Washington. Mr. Epstein, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
These numbers are troubling, really. We see that there seems to be a commitment from the international community, but when we hear these statistics, it really raises a question: what is really being done on the ground? Tangible actions. Are there anything that is there anything that is improving on the ground?
A little bit. A lot is being done, and certainly people in WHO, in the health ministries, in the NGOs working there, are working day and night to try to reduce the impact of this outbreak. But the reality is that we have thousands of cases, thousands of deaths, and we need much more international support to be able to get a grip on this outbreak.
So when we talk about support, we hear so much about the need for resources, protective gears, and other material. Can you tell us about what is needed moving forward?
Yes. WHO and the United Nations, organizations as a whole, estimated that we need about $988 million to effectively mount this response. So far, we've only gotten about 37% of that. But what we really need on the ground are more medical workers. Our officials say we need about 1,000 more international staff and about 20,000 health workers in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, and in Guinea to help isolate Ebola cases, treat the cases in Ebola treatment centers, and also we want to ensure that 70% of those who die from Ebola are safely buried. Unsafe burials have been a huge driver of this epidemic. So the goal now is within 60 days to isolate and treat 70% of all those people who have been infected with Ebola and safely bury 70% of those who have died. We think if we do that, we can start to bring the case numbers down.
But we've seen the extent to which healthcare workers have been infected in Africa, as well as even in the United States. And it's disconcerting to see that in a country where the health system is so well organized and put together, healthcare workers can be infected. So what are the steps? What is being done to protect these workers that are volunteering their time to ensure that this outbreak doesn't spread?
Well, to do that, we have estimated that we need about 3 million suits, the personal protective equipment suits. We've already shipped about 300,000. We're sending more every day to West Africa. We're training people in how to put them on and take them off. This is a very crucial step. If you have the personal protective equipment and don't know how to put it on and how to take it off correctly, you do face the risk of infection. So there's intensified training going on, and it's very unfortunate. Healthcare workers have suffered unduly from this outbreak. About 400 of them in West Africa have been infected, and 230 of them have died, including some of the most prominent doctors in Sierra Leone and Nigeria.
Indeed.
It's loss.
It's very troubling. Well, Mr. Daniel Epstein, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
And that was Daniel Epstein, WHO spokesperson here in Washington, D.C., joining us via Skype. That's our Africa Health Report for today. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks a lot, Lenore. Now, be sure to watch Lenore Mudu's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. A special meeting of Roman Catholic bishops and lay advisors at the Vatican is moving the Catholic Church toward a more tolerant relationship with homosexuals, divorcees, and others it has shunned and marginalized in the past. Viewers Al Pesson reports from London.
A mass opened the conference that Pope Francis called in an apparent effort to change the way the Catholic Church deals with people it considers to be in irregular situations, while not changing its doctrine. The Synod will not alter the Church's official positions against homosexuality and same-sex marriage, its ban on divorce and polygamy, or its opposition to people living together without getting married. But in a preliminary document, participants have indicated they want to change the way priests and churches interact with such people. Specifically, it says homosexuals have gifts and qualities that can benefit the Church, and that homosexual relationships can provide mutual aid and support. It also says there are positive aspects to the relationship of heterosexual couples who live together out of wedlock, what the Church used to call living in sin.
I think it's a very great impact. It's going to affect many, many people's lives.
Father Joe Evans is the Catholic chaplain of London's King's College.
We're telling people with the same-sex attraction, you're welcome in the church, no to marriage, but you have a great role. For us, what really matters in the church is sanctity, holiness, and a homosexual person can be as holy as anybody else.
And even though that approach does not alter the church's view that homosexuality is immoral, the move is being called a revolution and an earthquake.
There's no change in the doctrine, but there's a change in the approach. Very much Pope Francis. Pope Francis is insisting on continuity, but with a strong focus on mercy and love.
That has been Pope Francis's emphasis ever since he took office 18 months ago, and this synod will make his approach formal policy. But that doesn't mean it will be welcomed worldwide, says Anna Abram, the head of Pastoral and Social Studies at the University of London's Heathrop College.
I think in some countries it will be harder to implement this kind of guidance, where there is perhaps more, let's label, conservative approach in the church, because it is a big shift in the language, at least if it's not in the doctrine.
But Abram says for many Catholics, this will indicate that their church is finally evolving on issues on which many societies have changed their views in recent decades.
That is a big breakthrough, that people who are in these so-called irregular situations can be more welcome, can be active, can be recognized. They don't have to feel that they are sinners. In fact, I think it was sinful probably for the church to be using that kind of language in the past.
Abram says for the first time the Roman Catholic Church is focusing on the people in those irregular situations rather than on what they do. And that, she says, is worthy of terms like revolution and earthquake. Al Pessin, VOA News, London.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Well, look who's here. A big surprise for moviegoers in New York City. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headline.
In Somalia, at least 5 are dead after a car bomb explodes in the capital Mogadishu, the second al-Shabaab attack. In Libya, the battle for Benghazi kills at least 13 more people as a former general who supports the Libyan army attempts to retake Benghazi from Islamic militants. In Madagascar, the African Union speaks out against the return of exiled President Marc Ravalomanana, saying it is simply an unacceptable provocation. Finally, in South Africa, a cousin of Rivers Steenkamp says that Olympian Oscar Pistorius, quote, needs to pay for what he's done, unquote, at a sentencing hearing.
That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Well, Greece gave Amal Alameddine Clooney a rare treat as she was guided around the Acropolis Museum by its president and culture minister, an honor usually reserved for foreign dignitaries. Now, the new wife of Hollywood star George Clooney has had talks with the Greek prime minister as part of a campaign to return the Parthenon as sculptures from Britain. Greece has hired her London law firm to ramp up its claim to the sculptures. The 50th century BC treasures known as the Elgin marbles in the UK are kept in the British Museum in London. Next, talk about being in the right place at the right time. Brad Pitt and the cast of Fury crashed the New York City premiere and the crowd went wild. Brad introduced the film telling the crowd, "You are the first audience to see Fury, so enjoy." Brad later called it a night to rest up before the Fury cast headed to Washington, D.C. for another screening. And finally, a high honor in Japan for a South African artist. The premium Imperial Honors artists who have contributed significantly to the development of arts and culture. The award was formally presented by Japan's Prince Hitachi to the 5 recipients, which included South African playwright and actor Atul Fugard. He is known for anti-apartheid works. Fuget's first novel, Tsotsi, was made into a film which won the 2006 Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. The awards are often called Japan's Nobel Prizes for the arts, and that is what is trending. Well, 3 days a week, a bus pulls up in downtown San Francisco to offer showers for the homeless. As viewers Michael Sullivan reports, the mobile showers are provided by a small charity called Lava Me, playing off the Spanish word Lava Me for wash me.
Those who live on the streets struggle to find basic services, something as simple as a bath or shower. The San Francisco charity is helping by providing showers for the homeless 3 times a week. Martin Rodriguez, who keeps all of his belongings in a folding grocery cart, came to clean up.
I'm waiting for housing, and I sleep in the streets, so I need to take a shower in the blue bus. It's a good service.
The project got underway in June after an internet campaign raised $75,000 to refurbish an old bus. The internet giant Google provided an additional $100,000. Lava Me's Leah Filler says this is a one-of-a-kind service in San Francisco or anywhere else.
No one, as far as we know, is turning old buses into shower buses like we do, and operating on kind of a level of collaboration with the city and local government, with the nonprofits, with the private sector that we operate with.
Volunteers help clean the bus and keep things running smoothly. Volunteer Lisa Olswing has been helping for the past 3 months.
It's brought me such joy. At the same time, it's so sad because people have to use this service, that they're on the street, and I never forget that.
The showers offer a chance to feel clean and refreshed, says a young homeless man named Justin Van Horn.
It's nice to feel my skin and not feel dirt on it, and wash the smell off.
Lava Me founder Denise Sandoval says there are food programs for the homeless, but few sanitary facilities. She spearheaded this project after hearing a homeless woman complain about the problem. As word of the shower bus spread, Sandoval says interest has grown dramatically.
And I instantly started getting contacted by people from all over saying, help us create something like this in our community. So as far away as Mongolia and Ghana to just down the way in Palo Alto and San Jose, we're beginning to have conversations about how we can support those efforts.
The nonprofit group Lava Me has 3 more buses waiting to be retrofitted with showers to expand its outreach to San Francisco's homeless. Mike O'Sullivan, VOA News, San Francisco.
Super. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night. Able to touch on things that are important to people on an everyday basis. Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. In a lively half hour, news, sports, health, lifestyle information, comments from our viewers. Africa 54, the best for Africa, about Africa. Join us only on VOA.